Hi and welcome to this morning's Trending. Today's show is brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over and use the code TRENDING to shop.iconic.com for 10% off our range of coffees. So let's dive into the news. A MAGA champion who said Trump would fight child predators is arrested on charges of being a child predator. What do you know? Now, this is often the case. They get themselves in there to pretend they're fighting against the same thing they're actually doing. But this guy also has some political connections through his wife as well. A fervent Trump supporter who said that he was casting his 2024 vote to fight child trafficking is now being charged with 10 counts of possessing child pornography. Scott Susek of Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, was arrested on July the 24th and accused of accessing hundreds of child pornography images through a file sharing system. This guy is supporting Trump. Susek isn't just a Trump booster himself. He also is the husband of a leading Republican Party operative in the state. Now, how did they let this one slip through the net? I mean, we don't know whether his wife knew or not. So let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she didn't. But wow, the connections. His wife, Stephanie Susek, is the chairwoman of the Door County Republican Party. Last year, she represented Wisconsin as a delegate at the Republican National Convention. And there's a video on the Yahoo News where you can go and see her. I mean, we don't know if this poor lady was aware of it. I say poor lady because I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, but we don't know if she was aware of what her husband was doing. I certainly think that, she'd be worried about her political career if she knew. In a Facebook post last October, Scott Susek listed 24 reasons why he planned to vote for Trump. I'm voting to fight against human/child trafficking, Susek wrote as one of the reasons. Did you now? He added later in the post that he was not just voting for himself, but also for my children and my grandchildren. He's looking at this stuff on the internet. It's just, how do these people think they're not going to get caught? More than 15 years before that post, Door County investigators analysed his laptop. 15 years before. And he admitted to downloading child pornography images in 2009. However, he was never charged with a crime. Oh my God, so 15 years before this incident. So she must have known about this. So then I take that back. She must have known because she's been married to him. 15 years before, it says here, he was investigated and found to be doing the same thing. That's incredible. So I'll read that again. More than 15 years before that post, the one I'm going to support Trump because child trafficking and we don't want any of that. 15 years before that, so that was 2024, Door County investigators analysed his laptop, so the wife must have known, and he admitted to downloading child pornography images in 2009. However, he was never charged with a crime. So then his wife's been allowed to go on and have a political career, which, to be fair, she's not the person doing it. But surely she's aware of her husband having done it because the police investigated her and nothing was said as she goes on and tries to have a Republican Party political career. Absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. The lunatics are running the asylum and the child abusers, unfortunately. The new criminal complaint filed against Susek this month states that it remains unclear why the 2009 investigation into Susek was not referred to the local district attorney's office. Does it? Or is this all political cover-ups? Doesn't really remain unclear, does it? It remains not confirmed, but not unclear. The 12-page complaint includes horrifying descriptions of the explicit images that were downloaded to an IP address believed to belong to Susek in March of this year. So that's the current one. So he's done it again. Did it in 2019. He was investigated. Surely his wife must have known about that. Come on, obviously. Can't say that for sure, but The police were investigating it and they found it. And then 15 years later, in 2024, he does the same thing. And she's in the political sphere for the Republican Party. Absolutely insane. Outside of his Facebook post disavowing child trafficking last October, both he and his wife were vocal MAGA advocates during the 2024 campaign. In October 2024, Stephanie Suzek appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room. Now, he may not have known anything about this, whether they actually do their research or not. I mean, surely he's looked into the background of this woman and found this, but there you go. Make of that what you will. I was interviewed by future FBI Director Kash Patel about her efforts to turn out Republican voters in Wisconsin. So Kash Patel, the FBI Director, is interviewing a woman whose husband is known to have downloaded child pornography images. As if they don't know these things. And you're going to put Kash Patel in charge as the director of the FBI, and he can't even do a little bit of a Google search on that. Utterly ridiculous. This whole system in the UK and the US, around the world, is riddled with these absolute vile creatures. I mean, that's absurd to me. That's blown my mind that Kash Patel had interviewed this woman whose husband was doing that. And this isn't to say a slight on MAGA, really. Even Donald Trump, as much as I dislike the man, usually lose the term man, because, you can't say that's the whole entire movement and the belief system, the ideology. We've got plenty to go on there of what they're doing in the Middle East and involved with this messianic nonsense. But it doesn't look good, does it? And it's clearly been covered up. And to have the FBI director, future FBI director, interview the woman whose husband was doing that knowingly is absurd to me. This just shows you how corrupt and disgusting the whole thing is. So let's move on back over here into the UK. Seems if you speak out against anything that would be deemed a terrorist or organisational crime, the law steps in, or they try to use the law, the criminals, to point the finger back at you. This is absurd, especially when you read one specific bit. Ministers say lawyers missing the point on Palestinian recognition. Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has said warnings that the recognition of a Palestinian state could breach international law are missing the point. They're also missing the facts. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced the UK would move towards recognition unless Israel met certain conditions, including agreeing a ceasefire and reviving the prospect of a two-state solution earlier this week. Now, let's put this in perspective. We know Hamas was propped up by Netanyahu to thwart even the prospect of the PLO creating exactly this, a two-state solution. A Palestinian state. Hamas were plugged in there, funded by the West, propped up by Netanyahu, openly known this. And they say it backfired on him. It obviously didn't. You've put your proxy army in there. And then on October the 7th, they were allowed to do what they were allowed to do. This video's out just yesterday. IDF soldiers on patrol that time were told to stand down, even though they didn't really understand as to why. It's obvious what happened. We've been pointing that out from October the 8th. You can't get across there with wire cutters, tractors and hang gliders. It's absurd. But I digress. So, however, some of Britain's most distinguished lawyers have warned that Palestine does not meet the legal requirements for statehood under a 1933 treaty. 1933 treaty. I wonder who was involved putting that together. Nearly 150 of the UN's 193 members already formally recognise a Palestinian state, with Canada, Germany and Portugal considering recognition. Under the Montevideo Convention, signed in 1933, the criteria for the recognition of a state under international law are set out as a defined territory. How can you define a territory when Israel keep putting new settlements there and annexing places? So that's absurd. A permanent population, well, there was until you killed them all. An effective government, you plugged in Hamas there to take over from the government was already there. So you have put the terrorists in there and funded them. This is the way it works. And the capacity to enter into relations with other states. In a letter to the government's Attorney General, Lord Hermer, first reported by the Times, 43 cross-party peers called for him to advise the Prime Minister against recognition. I bet they do. Check their funders. The group includes some of the country's top lawyers, such as former Supreme Court Judge Lord Collins of Malmesbury and Lord Panicky Casey, who is a patron of UK Lawyers for Israel. Mark your own homework. Utterly ridiculous. Go away. I'm not asking for your permission to recognise a Palestinian state. I recognise it now. I'm not asking for your permission, my man. But it gets even more absurd. It is clear that there is no certainty over the borders of Palestine. Of course there isn't, because you keep pushing them and breaking them down, they argue. And also that there is no functioning single government because you put Hamas in there to take it down. Fatah and Hamas being enemies, Fatah and Hamas being enemies. They're not enemies, they're proxy armies for your own Israeli ideology, Zionist Greater Israel project. Everybody knows it now. Stop this. It's nonsense. Embarrassing yourself. The UK did not, this is even funnier, if any of it's funny. It's absurdly funny. The UK did not sign the 1933 convention. So what are they waffling on about? Didn't even sign it. Didn't even sign it. So we didn't even agree to it. That's not how things work. But this is even absurd. Because it's been around a while, it must be legal, even though you didn't sign it. The UK did not sign the 1933 convention, but the lawyers argue that it has become part of customary law and it would be unwise to depart from it at a time when international law is seen as fragile or indeed at any time. So you didn't sign it, you didn't agree to it, but these guys have been doing it for ages and it really suits our agenda of what we're trying to do of mass murdering people in the Middle East for this messianic ideology, and we've got to build our temple and all that stuff. So if you could just go along as if you signed it, because come on, look, the rest of us are doing it, that would be great. What are you on about? It's not even been signed. And everything, the criteria that you're talking about cannot be defined because of the criminal acts of what you're doing in the first place. We know that. It doesn't work anymore. Pack it in. It's time to grow up. So they add, you have said that a selective pick-and-mix approach to international law will lead to its disintegration and that the criteria set out in the international law should not be manipulated for reasons of political expedience even. Accordingly, we expect you to demonstrate this commitment by explaining to the public and to the government that recognition of a Palestinian state would be contrary to the principles governing recognition of states in international law, but that we didn't sign, we didn't agree to. In 1933, but now that doesn't make sense because you can go in and the criteria of what you set out, you can manipulate, which you have done. This is a nonsense point that literally doesn't have any grounding in anything because you didn't sign the law. We're not part of that. This is the same with the Brexit nonsense. Let's just put these things down and then we'll just kind of fudge it as we go along to suit our own agenda. Total nonsense, obviously. The world gets to recognise a Palestinian state, not these governments, not these politicians, nothing to do with them. I don't care what they think. You work for us. We'll recognise it. The 9 billion people on the planet that know that going in there, blowing up kids and young women and young men and sending soldiers in there that don't really understand, been brainwashed to think they're doing the right thing and coming back with their limbs cut off and blown off is not the right thing to do. We'll decide that, not you. You can have your own little fantasy land if you want, living in your own little Zionist bubble, thinking that you're working towards the messianic age or whatever you occultists or cult decide that you believe. Go ahead, but the rest of the world doesn't have to go along with it, and we don't. Well, at least I don't. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but the large majority of people wouldn't, I hope, go along with what you're doing, especially when they realise that you put the army in there and created the problem reaction solution in the first place. Time's up. So, in terms of that, moving on, to implement you not ever talking about these things on the internet, and pointed out the fact that this is all leading to the 7 Noahide laws, which is really monetizing the compliance system. That's what it will be. It's a compliance system. Your social credit score is your compliance score. It's literally that. And that'll go through your social media and all other means, but social media will be a massive one and the internet will be a massive one. Unless obviously you work in Wisconsin, you can get away with doing all sorts apparently towards Kash Patel. So AI to stop prison violence before it happens. Now this sounds like a great thing. And again, these things tend to. So prison officers will use artificial intelligence to stop violence before it breaks out under new plans set out by Lord Chancellor today. Under the Ministry of Justice AI Action Plan, artificial intelligence predicts the risk an offender could pose and informs decisions to put dangerous prisoners under tighter supervision to cut crime and deliver swift justice for victims. This will help to cut reoffending and make our streets safe, part of the plan for change. So not rehabilitation. Again, on the surface, that looks, makes sense. But when you really, really look at it, this is basically post-crime, pre-crime. You're already in prison for a crime, and they're going to evaluate through technical means, through an algorithm, whether you're likely to commit other crimes whilst you're on the inside. AI will be used across prisons, probation and courts to better track offenders and assess the risk they pose with tools that can predict violence behind bars, uncover secret messages sent by prisoners and connect offender records across different systems. So basically you are almost stretching out the prison system beyond its own walls because you are now collecting data on those that come in and visit these people who are not offenders, haven't been charged with any crime. You can see how it's kind of sucking people into this stuff. And you can say, yeah, well, if you're not committing any crimes, then what you should worry about. And absolutely. If it's as extreme as passing phones onto people and organising actual criminal activity outside. But what defines criminal activity? These lunatics, as we've seen, that get put in these positions of authority are criminals. Thus the point. The AI violence predictor, great name, analyzes different factors such as prisoner's age, I could tell you that, and previous involvement in violent incidents while in custody. I could tell you that too. If you literally just write it down. This will help prison officers access threat levels on wings and intervene or move prisoners before violence escalates. Sounds like a good idea, but why do you need artificial intelligence to do that? Another AI tool will be able to digitally scan the contents of mobile phones seized from prisoners to rapidly flag messages that could provide intelligence on potential crimes being committed behind bars, such as secret code words. Again, we've got a problem with that. How's this technology going to be used elsewhere? And also having the phone in there in the first place is the crime. This will allow stuff because you've got to find the phone. So you've kind of stopped that already. This is just another way of ushering in post-crime, pre-crime. And then we have Argentina and Malay, who's a Habadnik, kissing the Wailing Wall like they all do, bringing in pre-crime there. So once there is no rehabilitation, this will affect your social credit score, your compliance score to your no-hide laws. This is where it's all going. This will allow staff to discover potential threats of violence to other inmates or prison officers, as well as plans to escape and smuggle in weapons or contraband. These phones, often used for gang activity, drug trafficking and intimidation, are a major source of violence in prison. Absolutely. Completely get that. And that is a good use of this technology. This technology, which uses AI-driven language analysis, has also been trialled across the prison state and analysed over 8.6 million messages from 33,000 seized phones. 33,000. Just snuck that number in there. 33rd degree is magic, the numerical value of all the letters in the word magic, and obviously 33rd degree. Freemasonry, they always put a symbolic code of where this movement fits within the greater project of this Olam Haba world to come. So 33,000 seized phones, that's not a coincidence. These people who write these articles maybe not the actual people that write them, but the editors will have something like that often slipped into the article itself to show what this is all part of. The AI action plan also outlines how the department will create a single digital ID for all offenders, with AI helping to link separate records across courts, prisons and probation for the first time. Sounds like really good on the surface, like it always does, but this won't stop there, will it? Absolutely won't. And how long till when you leave prison, they just carry on tracking you and building up your profile? Of course they do. And they've been doing it for years. This is nothing new. They just want to be able to do it out in the open. Palantir, Peter Thiel, massively behind this. Peter Thiel was in business with Jeffrey Epstein, and now funds J.D. Vance. Previously funded Donald Trump. All links back, doesn't it? Dirty swamp, dirty boys. And some girls as well. Tech giants blocking some Ukraine and Gaza posts under new online rules. Now, the sad thing about this, I mean, this is from BBC Verify, so, shaky ground already. But the sad thing really about this is that they're acting as if it was a shock. Oh my God, they've gone and used technology that they said to us protect us, to spy on us. Social media companies are blocking wide-ranging content, including posts about the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Of course they are, in an attempt to comply with the UK's new Online Safety Act. I mean, what are you? Just go away. We'll say what we want. The new legalisation, which came into effect last Friday, imposes fines on social media companies and other websites which fail to protect under 18s from pornography, posts promoting self-harm, and other harmful content, which is so vague and ridiculous that it could apply to absolutely anything. In serious cases, services could be blocked in the UK, which they've done to some social media platforms and video sites across the last couple of years, I believe. But BBC Verify found a range of public interest content, including parliamentary debates on grooming gangs, has been restricted on X and Reddit for those who have not completed age verification checks. Experts warn companies are risking stifling legitimate public debate by overlapping the law. Now, what's really important here to understand is that this law is about to come, or has come into effect, I'm not quite sure, of allowing 16-year-olds to vote in the UK. So what do you think what happens there? These two things go together. If you're under 18 and you're getting this information blocked, how can you legitimately vote on something? You don't have the information. So they have just created an army of useful young people, shall I say, who now will vote at a percentage in the way in which they want people to vote. How many young people will know that Hamas was initially propped up by Netanyahu and plugged in as a proxy army? None, maybe a few, if that. They're going to vote on what they think. Oh, Hamas are a terrorist organization. Yes, they are. But it's not as simple as you think. And that's just an example. So now you've got 16-year-olds voting who are clueless because their source of information has been blocked. You've just created another percentage for you to vote in that way. And these are the adults of the future, by the way, obviously. So that's just going to perpetuate out through the years. So Sandra Watcher, great name for this, a professor of technology and regulation at the Oxford Internet Institute, expressed alarm at the restrictions and told BBC Verify that the new bill was not supposed to be used to suppress facts of public interest, even if uncomfortable. Oh dear, Watcher. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Sometimes I despair. She's a professor of technology and regulation at the Oxford Internet Institute, and she doesn't understand that this online harms bill was about suppressing free speech and the flow of information. You can but laugh, can't you? We live in topsy-turvy land. Organisations can be fined up to 18 million or 10% of their global revenue if they are found to have failed to stop harmful content appearing on their platforms. Under the Act, harmful content includes posts containing pornography, fair enough, or any which encourage self-harm, eating disorders, or promote violence. And the other bit as well about harmful content. Still very vague. Professor Sonia Livingston, an expert in children's digital rights at the London School of Economics, said the companies might get better over time at not blocking public interest content while also protecting children as the law beds in over time. Total nonsense. You're talking about the algorithms picking up certain things. It will become more restrictive. And now you've let a bunch of 16-year-olds loose on voting for things that they don't understand because their information system is now blocked. I mean, this is where we are, isn't it? This is where we are. And this is just now been blocking information now. They're going to go back and start deleting, re-editing, which they've always done to a certain degree, information from the past. So it's important to get things offline because that's the hub of where everything is being stored. Buy books. Keep them at home. Strange world. Thank you for joining me this week and supporting the show. The show is brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com. Use the coding for 10% off. And the boys will be back next week, and I will see you over the weekend. On the other side of the weekend. Have a lovely weekend. Take care. Goodbye.